You know those moments where you are trying to find the answer for something or remember something, when you forget a word and you're like, oh, it's just on the tip of my tongue. What is it? And you feel that kind of tension or grip happen of trying to remember that thing or think that thing or remember that thing. I call that being stuck in the think stage. So what happens when we are stuck in the think stage with that tight grip of trying so hard to remember or think of a solution or whatever it is it actually shuts down our creative part of our brain. And the creative part of our brain is the part of our brain that allows us to open up to different solutions, and it allows us to find more creative ways forward, or actually let that memory of that word that's escaping us and just on the tip of our tongue actually come back in. And it can be challenging sometimes, I know, when you're stuck in that mode and you're just trying to get that work done, or you're trying to get the thing done, or trying to solve the thing, or whatever it is, to allow yourself to step away from it. Sometimes that can feel really counterintuitive and counterproductive, and it can feel really challenging to even want to do anything else other than work on the thing. But I find sometimes what can help is deliberately stepping away from that space. It doesn't need to be for a long time, so bear with me, because I understand the challenge. It doesn't need to be for a long time. It can be for 5 to 20 minutes even. So it might just be going for a walk, or going to make a cup of tea or coffee and then coming back, but not trying to solve it as you go and do that. It could be, and I used to find this helpful sometimes, especially when I worked in corporate, probably now as well actually, but I get to make that decision myself of when I do it now. But when I worked in corporate, sometimes I would just get up and go for a walk around the office, like around the outside if I could, depending on the weather. That fresh air and just stepping away from the environment in which I was trying to find the solution made a big difference. I would just go out, I'd walk, and it didn't take long. It took often less than 5 minutes of just stepping away from the space that I was in, the physical space, so that I could then better help myself step away from the thinking brain part of the space and deliberately try to not think. I might still be pondering things, and that's fine. If that was the case, that's normal, but I would step away. I'd go for a walk around the building, or I'd go make a cup of tea, and just kind of, while waiting for the jug to boil, I just kind of let myself gaze off outside or whatever it is. But giving my brain that break to step out of the think stage actually meant that when I came to sit back down at my desk or at whatever project I was working on, or whatever even conversation that I was having, sometimes it's okay to say like, hey, I just need to process this for a minute. Do you mind if I take a moment? Sometimes you can't physically walk away. Sometimes you're in a meeting or in a scenario where walking away isn't actually appropriate, and that's okay too. But it is okay to say, do you mind if I just sit with that for a moment and process, so that way the response that I have in return is actually useful for you and the scenario and all of that. And what that does is allows your creative brain, especially if you can get outside where there's fresh air and nature of some sort, even in a concrete jungle if you're in the city, there is fresh air somehow. So what that does is it opens up space in your brain. Basically, when your thinking brain is so switched on, it's tougher for your creative brain to come in and get online and then show you possibilities of solutions for whatever it is you're working on. So next time, in whatever way, and it might be a creative process even to find what those ways are, But in whatever way, allow yourself to step away from the thinking stage. Sometimes it can be really challenging, especially when you're like, well, I've got this stuff to work on, and especially if you're excited about it. But if you feel stuck at any stage, there are moments where it's useful to sit with it and just keep working through, and that is definitely a thing that I might speak about in another video. But there are also times where if you just feel stuck and you just can't think of it, to let yourself step away from it for 5 to 10 minutes at least. That actually, while it seems like wasting time sometimes, and some employers might actually view it as wasting time, I guarantee it's not. Because what happens then is once you spend that 5 to 10 minutes stepped away from that space and giving your brain that break, you come back and it becomes a space where you are more efficient and more productive and less fatigued even, and getting more shit done because you've taken that space. So researchers around having breaks in your day when you're at work, especially at a desk, they often talk about needing 5-minute breaks every hour or so. This is pretty much the same concept. So if you are one of those people that sits at your desk really stoically and makes a point of being that person that doesn't move from your desk for ages, maybe reconsider the usefulness and importance of taking those breaks every now and then for your efficiency, your energy levels as well, your focus, often accuracy. Mistakes happen when we are trying so hard as well. So consider all of that. If you are an employer or in management, consider encouraging that within your team as well. And if your immediate response is people are going to take the piss out of it, they will take advantage of it, then that's a whole other thing. You need to trust that the people you hire are going to do their jobs. And if you can't trust that, then there's a whole other thing to be discussed there. But for now, consider creating that culture where it is okay if you find yourself really stuck to take that 5 minutes away and just switch off for a moment. Like if someone goes to the tea room to make their tea or coffee, don't follow them and continue the conversation unless it's invited, because that might be their brain break. And you'll notice if people are doing it a lot more than what feels necessary or acceptable, but don't let that fear get in the way of allowing something that can be really useful for how we get things done.